The Primarchs of Warhammer 40k are one of the most unique and awesome aspects of this glorious setting. Yet with the advent of Ashes of the Imperium, there was a lot of discourse, not only surrounding the brand spanking new lore, but more specifically, the changes they made to the Primarchs. There were a great many people who were rather concerned as many of the Primarchs were seemingly acting out of character. Gilman was being corrupt, Dawn was being flagrant, and Vulcan was being wrongful. Thus, a lot of people got worried that the characters who they'd fallen in love with over the course of nearly a decade worth of lore were finally being changed into something completely different. But ladies and gentlemen, this is far from the truth. That's what we're going to be talking about today. As we return with What Our People Get Wrong About X series. It's been a while, I know, but today we're talking about what do people get wrong about the Primarchs. So strap in and buckle up and let's get cracking on with today's video. Alright, so no beating around the bush this time, I'm just gonna come out and say it. The thing that people get wrong about Primarchs is that they're human. They change. You think about yourself and the life you lived and the people around you. You from today is a hell of a lot different than you from 5 years ago. So you can imagine what the you from 7 years ago would be if you had been through the most grueling and terrible war mankind had ever known. Primarchs are people. They change, they go through experiences, and they learn from it. They grow, they develop. The Primarchs are a very unique thing in 40k. They're very much so demigods, and because of that, they are not human, not as we would commonly think of it. And due to this, many people kind of put them in their own separate category. Rightfully so in some cases, but at the end of the day, they're still human beings. They're still terribly flawed, prone to anger, vengeance, wrath, pride, ego, and all those lovely things that make us humans human. And that's what people seem to forget. They can change. You're not always happy, you're not always nice, and in the same vein, you're not always angry, you're not always mean. We go through our own things and through our own issues, and at the end of the day, who we are is just a reflection of every single lesson we've ever learned up until that point, be it for good or for ill. And the Primarchs, they're the exact goddamn same thing, but it's just because we imagine them as these omnipotent figures, these sons of God, for lack of a better term, that we tend to forget just how human they are. And it makes sense with every single Primarch. Gilman started out in the beginning of the heresy as very naive. Not necessarily an idealist, but definitely noble in his goals. He thought that with a good plan and proper subordinates, he could make the world turn. And throughout the entirety of the heresy, he learns that you can't plan for everything. You can't expect everything to go well. And sooner or later, something's going to go to shit. And ultimately, that comes up with him being this rebooted that we see in Ashes of the Imperium. Someone different, someone hurt, someone who doesn't trust anymore. And he goes from being the ideal paragon of what nobility should be, at least, well, trying to, into a truly political animal. From Cincinnatus to Augustus. As I mentioned in my previous video. So too we see with Dawn. Dawn was this inviolable bastion, this brick slab of a wall. Nothing fazed him, nothing worried him, no questioned. He had his duty and his duty all. But throughout the entirety of the 7 years, one thing is shattered after another, after another, after another, and finally, his legion lay broken. His father lay dying on the golden throne. So, no more does he give in to duty. The only thing left to him is making sure that the traitors pay. They pay in blood. In every last foul drop of blood that they have. Because he's hurt. He was the wall. But the wall was breached. And now if the wall can no longer serve as a bastion, what more can it serve as? Except for the devastating landslide of rubble and pain that will crush those who shattered its foundations. And I could go on and on about each and every single one of these Primarchs, including the traitors. But instead of going over each and every one of them, I'm going to hyper-focus on one specific, and give you a detailed breakdown of how he went through his transformation. And whilst not exactly the same to the other Primarchs, the way it goes and the path is pretty much the same throughout. They start off as one thing, and due to pain, trials, tribulations, they end up becoming something very different and almost, dare I say, unrecognizable. And that, of course, is Dragon Dad himself. Good old Papa Vulcan. Of course I'm gonna pick Vulcan, I'm a salamander, so the fuck you think? Now I have a massive full-on 2-hour chunk of a video about the salamander, so go check that out if you want it. But to preface this, Vulcan was born on the world of Nocturne, as many of you will know. He was born to a humble blacksmither named Nobel, and Vulcan would have continued being that simple man with a simple life. However, Dark Elder showed up and they decided to nab his people. Vulcan seeing this was like, nah, not gonna be to me. So he beat the ever-leading shit out of them with 2 giant smithing hammers. Ever since then, he was named as the Fireborn, a mythological figure from Noctin's mythology, said to be a protector of all mankind. Thus, did this demigod take that title, and so too Vulcan would have lived, being not a king, but a protector of his people. That was until the Emperor showed up. Now, why do I mention this? Because it's very important to understand what Vulcan's character is like at the beginning of the heresy. Vulcan never wanted to be a warrior. He never wanted to be a leader. He never wanted to be a general. And throughout the entirety of the heresy, and the many different stories we get set pre-heresy, a lot of them is Vulcan just questioning why. Like, is this what he's supposed to do? Is this what he's meant to do? He questions everything. Vulcan is a unique Primarch in that aspect, because whilst you have Primarchs like the Khan who question why this is being done, and you have Primarchs like Gilman who question how it's being done, Vulcan questions himself in this role. He wonders, am I the right one for the job? Vulcan at this point is very idealistic. He believes that all this is a means to an end, a necessity, but he still wonders if this is what it's meant to be. The years of war take its toll on him, and he comes to wonder. And we see in the novel Promethean Sun this comes to a head. This is when Vulcan first meets the will of Caldera, and thus he battles the Eldar there. And eventually, he has to eradicate the human population because they gave in to blood worship of a Dark Eldar. And during this time, Vulcan wonders why. He comes to a crisis of faith, a crisis of conscience, and he wonders, why am I doing this? Why is this happening? And in his words, his humors are unbalanced. But it's after this that Vulcan finds his resolve. He comes to understanding that there are things in this world that he cannot control. There are people that he cannot save. But this is his duty. This is his lot. So he will serve. And he will serve as best he can. Until one day, it comes to an end. And that's where Vulcan basically sits pre-heresy. Not what he wants to do, but Vulcan is a dutiful man. He does what is required of him, because it is his duty. He is a strong man. Thus it is the duty of the strong to shepherd the weak, to ward them and guard them until they themselves can grow strong. That's how Salamander's MO, and Vulcan is that to a T. Yet while Vulcan is resolved in this, he's still waiting for the chance he can go back to being a blacksmither. He knows it may never come, but he still has that desire. And we get a little bit of a glimpse of what exactly Vulcan would want, where his heart truly lies. In the book, Vulcan Lives, where he has a conversation with his favorite remembrancer, a young lady known as Seraph, taken from Vulcan Lives. "And so, you were raised a blacksmith's son?" she asked, wiping away another bead of sweat from her brow, dark patches showing under the arms of her robes and down her back. The remembrancer took a moment to sip from a flask. Without it, dehydration and acute heat stroke would have occurred in minutes. She wanted longer with the Lord of Drakes, and if this was the only way, then so be it. "Is that so hard to believe?" Vulcan answered, as the sound and smell of burning flesh, his flesh, filled the chamber. "And he was a blacksmither and a metal shaper, a craftsman of consummate skill that I greatly admired." A human, augmented to be able to perform his duty and live to do so again, withdrew a burning hand from the Primarch's skin. "Noted," said Seraph, scratching with a stylus onto the data sheet she held in the other hand. "It just seems like a humble origin for a Lord of Space Marines." The remembrancer was sweltering now, having endured a full 21 minutes in the Primarch's chambers. "Should I have a more regal upbringing then?" Vulcan asked, while the brander picked up a fresh iron. "No, I didn't mean that," said Seraph, wincing as Vulcan's flesh burned anew, sizzling like meat in a cook pan. "I just assumed that all the Primarchs came from warlike, vaunted beginnings, either born that, or born as orphans on Deathworlds." "Nocturne is a Deathworld, and hardly civilized, but our origins are all different. I do wonder sometimes how we all came back to our father's service, as warriors and generals, but here we stand, at the forefront of the Great Crusade, doing just that." Sarah frowned, then wiped her brow with the sleeve of her robe. "What else could you have been?" "Tyrants, murderers, architects, It was only fate that made us leaders, and I am still unsure as to how our genetic heritage predisposed us to that calling." "And which would you have been then?" asked Seraph curiously. Vulcan smiled, though it did little to warm his diabolical voice. "A farmer, I think." "You would take your blacksmith's anvil and turn a sword into a plowshare? Is that it?" "Overly poetic, but yes, that's it." Seraph paused, either she was gasping in the heat or drawing some conclusion. "You don't seem like the others." "And you know my brothers, do you? Remembrancer Serif." There was a mild reproach in Vulcan's tone, just enough to intimidate. It flustered the Remembrancer, and she looked on the verge of collapse. "No, of course not. I have just heard." "A wise chronicler does not believe all she hears, Serif." For the first time since the interview began, Vulcan raised his head. "Tell me," he said, his voice deepening. "What do you see when you look in my eyes?" Fire." At last she wilted and collapsed. Vulcan rushed forwards and caught her, so that she did not fall. Okay, before we go any further, I know people like the ships of the Primarchs, Gilvin x Yvraine, Jagatai x Dark Elder, so on and so forth, Archotal and the Red Lady, yada yada blah blah, sure, cool. How is it that never once have I ever come across anything relating to Vulcan x Seraph? Why? Where's the love for Dragon Dad? Where's his fucking GF? I want it. Give me what I asked for. But my yearning for the love of giant Dragon Dad x Tiny Remembrancer aside, this is a keen insight into Vulcan's psyche. Vulcan is a general. Vulcan is a leader. Vulcan is a warrior. And in Ferris's words, Vulcan is a damn destroyer. But that's because he has to be. Vulcan, which very rarely amongst the Primarchs, I think only maybe Sanguinius would share this, has a very humble approach. Whilst there are many other Primarchs who wanted to be anything but generals, Magnus wanted to be the greatest scholar there's ever been, Perturabo a master architect, building cities of pragmatism and beauty. Vulcan just wanted to be a farmer. Homie literally was doing his Cincinnatus cosplay, being out there with his cabbages. Though it being Nocturne, it'd probably be something like fire cabbages or something. But that's all that Vulcan wanted to be. A simple man. A normal man. Not even a lord amongst men. Not even a well-made, middle-class, high-middle-class, like no, nothing, just simple dude. Homie just wanted what everyone else wanted. The dream of a mortal man. The dream of a human man. I've often said that Vulcan is the most human of all Primarchs. And that's not only because of his actions, but also mainly how he thinks. Many times a Primarch may show mercy, they may show happiness, friendliness, or companionship, but Vulcan, deep down, he is someone who simply just wants, well, what any other human wants. To live a peaceful life, full of plenty. Nothing more, nothing less. But that's who Vulcan was before the heresy. The heresy changed Vulcan. Arguably, it changed Vulcan more than any other Primarch, except save perhaps Horus, or those who died. Vulcan suffered so much throughout the entirety of the heresy. Being at the Dropside Massacre, he saw his legions sundered. He was with Conrad Kurz and tortured by his brother, again and again and again, slowly revealing that Vulcan could not die. He went through trial and tribulation, having to transfer through the webway, seeing his own father on the throne, being told that he holds the key to humanity's destruction if chaos should win. Vulcan again and again had been given the burden to be the watchman, to be the one who had to do what was needed to be done, the one to whom duty was above all. And even someone like Vulcan, a great dragon with mighty scales, even he was brought low by this. Even he was broken by the fires of the heresy. And although reforged, definitely stronger, I don't know if we can say better. For the Vulcan we see in Ashes of the Imperium, there is a fire, yes, but there is something dark and foul about it. Taken from Ashes of the Imperium. Now one of them limped out across the open space. Its armor hung from its body in pieces. exposing patches of pale pink flesh. Its eyes had grown bulbous, like those of an insect. Some of its bones looked badly broken and unset, causing it to bend nearly double and drag one ruined leg behind it. It was struggling to breathe, and bubbles of blood foamed at the corners of its gaping mouth. One of its claws still clutched a barbed blade. The other hung limp. The giant waited for it. He flexed his great hands, still empty of any weapon, and regarded his prey. Praetor caught a mere glimpse of the gaze of that dark, grizzled face, and that might have been the very worst aspect of the entire scene. The giant was furious, beyond furious, deranged with fury, drunk with it, fueled and bolstered and driven into mania by it. So what followed was no contest. Neither was it over with quickly. The wretch ludicrously attempted to attack. It opened its withered jaws and tried some kind of strange sonic scream. It swung its blade, going for the hamstrings. It clawed at the giant, attempting to sink its talons into its thick and encrusted hide. None of it troubled the giant. You could have killed it with a single blow, Praetor reckoned. He didn't. He disarmed it contemptuously. He swung his fists, heavily, but not enough to end it. He toyed with it. He damaged it. He left openings for it, and then kicked it to the dust. He led it to believe it could crawl away, and then dragged it back. He hurt it. He tore up its residual armor, leaving it naked and shriveled. He never spoke to it, never mocked it, but the humiliation was explicit. Bit by bit, he stripped away its Astartes gift. He rendered the body down to something close to its pre-ascension state, and what remained was a blood-glistened, shivering mess of sinew and gristle. Its cries became abject, its attempts to rise feeble. The giant gave it no respite. He lingered further, doling out agony in slivers. All the time, he glared at it with that terrible, terrible expression. If the wretch had been able to still see, it would have looked up into those burning eyes. It would have known just what this was about. A dismantling, a removal of privileges, the reversion of the mystical rights of the legions, and the resumption of a half-forgotten mortal frailty. By the time the thing died, it was no longer in the category of Astartes. It was just a body, just an animal, just a beast. Finally, it was over. The corpse, what remained of it, slumped to the dust. The giant stood over it for a moment or two, his hands running with gore. Then the salamanders returned and dragged the remains away. The echoes of its cries died. The space sank once more into stinking silence. Praetor did not dismount at once. He looked up at Abidemi, who did not return his glance. Then he pushed the hatch open, clambered into the sunlight, walked up to the giant and bowed. "My Lord Vulcan," he said softly. The Primarch turned to face him. The expression of rage on his face took a while to subside. You could imagine him just carrying on now, picking up where he'd left off, maybe not even noticing which legion he was meting out vengeance on this time. It was an unsettling sensation. Those blood-red eyes clarified. He blinked. He flexed those huge, wet hands. "You saw that?" Vulcan asked. "I did." "You wish to complain of it to your master?" "I am not here as your judge, my lord. Nor could I ever be." Vulcan gave a grim smile. "Modest for one of your legion." "We were not here. Reason enough to be." Vulcan nodded. "Aye, that is so." The Primarch, up close, was a study in contrast. On the one hand, he had the aura of invincibility that all his brothers possessed. The sense that they were carved from granite, fueled by reactors, bound up by layers of fate that wrapped them as tight as embalming linen. Vulcan had always been one of the most physically imposing of them. Tall, broad, his features heavy, his demeanor unnervingly solid. Now, though, something seemed to have broken. Praetor knew a little of the torments he had endured during the siege. He also remembered how Vulcan had appeared on Macragge during the heady days of his master's rival empire. Maddened, almost feral, an elemental force sustained more by arcane magics than by mortal will. That all left its mark. Here, under Terra's unforgiving grey sunlight, Vulcan's face was ragged and time-worn. His armor, once perhaps the finest of any Primarchs, was dull and crisscrossed with welding lines. Though he was just as tall before, just as broad-shouldered, he somehow seemed emptier, as if the furnaces within him were cooler and ash-choked. Perhaps it was the retreat of the gifts. Perhaps all of his kin would be affected by that great ebbing. Perhaps, just perhaps, Vulcan's most famous ability of all would no longer answer. And in this new world of hard-edged laws, his life was as much at risk from ending as Praetor's own. "You came here to seek your brother Fulgrim, I was told," Praetor said. Vulcan wiped the blood from his mouth. "Not him. He's gone now, snatched away by his own stupid bargains. His sons, though, his damned ruined sons. Yes. You find them everywhere you look out here, like snakes under rocks." Praetor gazed out across the makeshift arena at the remains of Emperor's children's space marines festering in the heat. He remembered the patterns on the walls, the evidence of earlier atrocities. "How long had they been at work here?" he asked. "Long enough." Vulcan's voice was grim, "And I could show you what we found when we caught them." "I am sure you could." Praetor turned back to him. "But you will know why I am here." "My leash has run too long. My brother wishes to yank it back." "I can assure you that is not how he sees it." "That is just how he sees it. That is how he sees it for all of us, Rogal included." "On the contrary, he merely wishes to—" "Do not dare, Ultramarine." The change in tone was startling, the sudden descent back into the old fury. "Do not dare tell me what I must think, or what must not think about what he wants. I have long been an instrument of others. You know it yourself. My gift, or my curse, has made me both valuable and dispensable. Never was I asked for my counsel, only for my service. This is no change. He merely wishes to have numbers to overrule objection." Vulcan grimaced again. Was the Primarch in pain? Had something snapped within that huge physical frame? His body must have been made and remade 100 times. Perhaps one of the iterations had gone awry. "He knows what he wants to do," Vulcan went on, less animatedly. "He always knows. So, what is it? What grand scheme has he hatched, ready to be unveiled to lesser souls for their agreement?" This was delicate. Praetor had little mandate to speak on his master's behalf. "The palace is secure," said Praetor, "as much as it can be made so. The system is being cleansed of the enemy. Some have fled into the warp, others have been stranded. A debate has emerged. Some wish to pursue the traitor fleets into the void. If they escape us, they may regroup and gather their strength again, and many of their commanders still yet live. Others believe this course to be folly, and that we are too weak to attempt it. Mars and Luna are too close, both still occupied, both too powerful. Not until we have taken those fortresses can we consider moving beyond them. Vulcan listened carefully, although almost unwillingly, as if he were mindful of being tempted back into getting involved with such things. What is your master's view? The latter course. We do not have the numbers that some ascribe to us. Most of your surviving brothers are still lost, and no pursuit of the guilty could succeed, while the forges of Mars remain set against us. But the Praetorian, he makes the opposite case. To strike back quickly, in his estimation, the prospect of traitor leaders escaping makes the gamble worthwhile. Vulcan had finally grinned, exposing bloody teeth. And I am sure the arguments have been civilized. Praetor laughed. I would not know, Lord. Vulcan bowed his head, resting his chin on the collar rim of his thick breastplate. He placed his enormous hands together, interlocking the fingers. He remained still for a while, then looked up around him, across the vista of gorge-ribbed bones. And yet, all I wish to do now, he said eventually, deliberately, is to hurt them, to punish them, to make them suffer. His voice was so very bleak. I never felt that before, not after Istvan. That was war, albeit the worst kind. What they did after that, what they will do if they survive this, it is not war. It is nothing. They are a disease. Eradication is all they warrant. Vulcan gazed up, staring out into the turbulent sky. So what if that damns us? So what if the Imperium does not survive it? My father believes in the law. Does he speak to us of it still? No one can tell me yet. So we must determine it now. And I came here to kill them. I saw Hatek Anaka. I saw Unama. I saw Galahav. And I saw this place. And all it did was poison my soul a little more each time. He turned back to Praetor. The savagery was back in his eyes. After this exchange, Vulcan would calm down and acquiesce that he would indeed come to the council only after he had killed every single emperor's children in the area, and he did so. Looking at this and reading this, many people are very worried about Vulcan because they're like, this isn't Vulcan. This is torture, this is slow, this is painful, this is malice. How on earth could Vulcan ever do this? Because, and I'm gonna level with you a little bit here, to all those who have asked, how could a Primarch do this? How could Rogel be flagrant? How could Corvus just dip? How could the Khan be bloodthirsty? How could Vulcan be wrathful? How could Guilliman be corrupt? Read their fucking story. Vulcan saw all his sons fucking die. Vulcan has been made and fucking remade, died and resurrected nearly hundreds of times. Vulcan knows his father is dead. The fucking Drake God, the warden of the throne, the dude in charge as the final right of protection to the Emperor, failed. Why? Because his fucking dad is dead. And all this suffering, the countless worlds he's seen burned, not just burned, people offered as sacrifice to fucking demons in the worst way possible. All of this was because his brothers wanted more. Vulcan, a man who was happy with being a fucking farmer, now has suffered and seen his family and his Imperium suffered so much because his brothers wanted more. Vulcan is unbreakable, but even he is wearied. Vulcan is fucking done. He doesn't care anymore. He wants to kill them. He wants to hurt them. He wants them to pay for what they've done. He wants those damn traitor dogs to suffer as he has suffered. But Vulcan hasn't turned into some bloodthirsty monster. He still takes time to listen. He still takes time to attend the council. He still listens to the council's beliefs. He still does what needs to be done. He still cares for people. He still looks out for people. He still does that. Because that is who he is. But that doesn't change the fact he's suffered so fucking much that he wants blood now. Why? Because he changed. Because shit happened to him. You are not the same if shit happens to you. So why do you expect a Primarch to be the same? Yeah, they're genetically augmented and all that. They're still humans. They're still humans. The whole story of the Horus Heresy is one of human beings being fucking stupid. That is who Vulcan is. That is what it is to be human. That is what it is to be a Primarch. And as I said, apply this to any Primarch, you get the same result, because all of them went through the same old shit. Vulcan is mad. Vulcan is angry because he's been hurt. And all the other Primarchs, they've changed because they've had life experiences that could do nothing but change them. Their whole world shattered. Everything they were told is a lie. The Emperor is basically dead. It's over. The Imperium lost the Horus Heresy. They may have won the Siege of Terror, but they lost in the end. And this is the aftermath. This is pain, hurt, sorrow, all of it rolled up into one fucked up ball of emotion. And that's what people get wrong about the Primarchs. They're human. They make mistakes. They change. They hurt. They hold grudges in their heart and scars on their flesh. Vulcan did not turn into fucking Conrad Kurz, but Vulcan wants to rip the fucking Emperor's children limb from fucking limb because they hurt him. Can you blame him? Gilliman is doing corrupt shit because he doesn't trust anyone, because he's been betrayed time and time again. Dawn doesn't care anymore because what's there to fucking guard? The Emperor is dead. The palace is in ruins. He doesn't have a purpose anymore. It all makes sense. And the final thing I'll touch upon is this. Love a Primarch for who they are, not who you think they are. Love them for all their flaws and all their benefits. Love them for being a human, not for being a caricature of a human that we think they are. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for watching. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you guys like about the Primarchs? What do you think? Do you always think that, or were you too guilty of thinking them as caricatures? I was like that for a while until I actually started doing research into them and reading into them, and you realize, oh wait, hold on, they're different, they're unique, they're bloody special. So yeah, let me know down below. Series is back, hope you guys enjoyed it. Comment and all that lovely nonsense. But I want to say a massive thank you to you guys for watching. But even more massive thank you to my awesome members and patrons. Shout out to my awesome Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3, Miss Majora of the Void, and Miss Tori. Shout out to my awesome Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Warsmith.Fireheart, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Bowen, Mr. Sean IRL7, Mr. Matthew Merrill, Mr. Sergeant Cossack, 68W173D, and Mr. That Guy. Shout out to my Cripple Gym members, Mr. Tremeo the Math Kitty, Lord Rosarius, Mr. Tech Priest Toaster, Mr. Bowen, Shauna Smithers, The Gentle Salamander, The Wench of Warhammer, Major Doshinet, Mr. Edward King, and Mr. Overanalyze This. And finally, but certainly not least, shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan_SVW, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Hayeda, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Fortis Unum, Mr. CMD Nay, Mr. Eric Massaro, Mr. Dom Marek, Mr. Ken_Sakura333, Mr. Adrian Von Furen, Mr. Morley Bankrupt, Mr. Matthew Peter, Josh Lee 1320, Mr. Adrax1, Mr. Ethan Elam U71, Mr. Kiri Khan. Thank you, I love you, I appreciate you guys, are amazing. Someday with memberships get a bunch of awesome benefits, early access to these videos, behind the scenes stuff, member only content, those special roles and shit on the Discord. But remember, this will always be free, so whether you give your boy $1 or not, I will love you just the same. Mwah! But ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, amazing people. Thank you also very much for watching. And we should say hello there, boys and gals. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss Rangers. This is your daily reminder that our Vulcan is a nice dragon, he's still a fucking dragon, and dragons breathe fucking fire.